a man from one of the most sacred bloodlines in Islam, a direct descendant of a revered imam, stood in a deserted valley between mountains and Jordan while his own uncle pointed a gun at his chest and pulled the trigger at point-blank range. He should have died in that valley. The bullet entered his body, and what the doctors found when they examined him the next day has no medical explanation to this day. Stay until the very end, because what happened to that bullet is the moment this story stops being about religion and becomes about something no human being can manufacture. Drop a comment right now and tell me where in the world you are watching from. We are one family across every nation, and we will carry each other in prayer. This is a true story. No names will be used anywhere in this narration. This decision was made with great care because the individual involved still lives under a death sentence that carries no expiration date and can be enforced anywhere in the world at any time. The locations remain exactly as they were. Everything else is as real as the scar on his leg. I was born in Iraq in the late 1960s, a male child, the son of a man whose name carried enormous weight in our region. My father was a respected religious leader, the head of one of the largest Muslim clans in the area. And my bloodline, according to our tradition, traced directly back to the seventh Imam, to the Prophet Muhammad himself. I grew up understanding that this lineage was not simply a family history. It was a sacred responsibility. I was expected to be an example, a model of what faithful Islam looked like in daily life. I took that expectation seriously, and I wore it with pride. I observed every Islamic precept with intense dedication. I prayed, I fasted, I studied. Religion was not something I did on certain days. It was a foundation of my entire identity. I knew nothing else, and I wanted nothing else. In the spring of 1993, during my military service, I met a Christian for the first time in my life. I had known Christians existed in Iraq, but my entire social world had always been Muslim, and my understanding of Christians came entirely from what the Quran said about them. The word the Quran used was infidel. I believed they were spiritually unclean and destined for punishment. Meeting one in person was therefore a strange experience. He was kind. He was honest. He was respectful in a way that made me deeply uncomfortable because his character refused to match the portrait I had been given of him. I decided the best response was to convert him to Islam. I asked him for a copy of the Gospel, intending to use it as evidence that Christians had corrupted their own scriptures. He agreed to give it to me, but before he handed it over, he made one request. He asked me to read the Quran again, not as recitation from memory, but with the genuine intention of understanding every word. This request intrigued me. I already knew the Quran deeply, but I had never approached it as a document to be examined rather than recited. I went to an imam I had known since childhood, a man who treated me almost as a son, and told him what I was attempting. He revealed to me that true understanding of the Quran required mastery of classical Arabic grammar, knowledge of the context surrounding each chapter, and study of the major scholarly commentaries. He showed me that this was not a small undertaking. He indicated that a complete scholarly engagement would require reading hundreds of books. I nearly stopped there, but something inside me would not let the questions rest. I began reading the Quran with new eyes, slowly and with the intention of understanding rather than performing. Every question I brought to the Imam produced an answer that generated two more questions. The deeper I read, the more I noticed things I had never allowed myself to see before. Contradictions, accounts in the historical records about the Prophet that I found impossible to reconcile with the image of a man I should admire and imitate. The number of his wives troubled me deeply. The accounts of violence troubled me. The youngest of his wives was a child, and that fact, sitting in the primary sources without apology, broke something in me that I could not repair. After weeks of reflection, I made the most painful decision of my life up to that point. I left Islam, not with anger, with grief. It had been everything I was. Some time later, I reconnected with my Christian friend from the military. He remembered his promise and offered me the gospel. I accepted it. The night before he was to bring it to me, I had a dream. In the dream, I was standing at the edge of a narrow stream. On the other side stood a man whose presence drew me toward him in a way I cannot describe accurately with words. I tried to cross but found myself suspended, unable to move. The man looked at me with a compassion I had never seen on any human face. He told me, through the dream, that if I want to come to him, I would first need to eat the bread of life. I woke with those words beating in my chest. I had never heard that phrase before in my life. When my friend arrived with the gospel that same day, I took it to a corner and opened it without a plan, letting it fall to whatever page it would. It opened to the 6th chapter of John. The first sentence my eyes landed on told me that Jesus was the bread of life. My body reacted before my mind did. A current moved through me from my head to my feet. Those were the exact words from my dream. I had not read them before. I had not heard them in any sermon. They had come to me first in sleep, and now confirmed themselves on a page I had opened at random. I knew in that moment, with a certainty that required no further argument, that Jesus was real and that God himself had arranged that morning. I gave my heart to Jesus Christ that day in that corner with the gospel open on my lap. What followed was the beginning of the most painful season of my life. I began looking for a Christian community in Iraq, knowing that most believers in my country were concentrated in Baghdad. I traveled and sought them out. Every door I approached was closed to me. The people inside were afraid. They looked at me, a man from one of the most prominent Muslim families in the region, and they saw danger rather than a brother. I understood their fear. The Quran contains passages that call for the death of those who abandon Islam. The religious traditions are explicit. A man who leaves Islam for Christianity faces the most severe punishment. The Christians who turned me away were not being unkind. They were being careful in a country where carelessness costs lives. I practiced my faith alone and in secret. But secrets in tight communities do not stay secrets indefinitely. My family noticed a change in me before I said anything. They watched. They investigated quietly in a way that families do when they sense something is wrong, but have not yet named it. The discovery came through my oldest child, a boy of only 4 years old, who made the sign of the cross in front of family members without understanding what it revealed. They searched our home immediately and found the gospel I had hidden. Within days, I was arrested and brought before the Muslim religious authorities. A fatwa was issued against me, a formal religious decree declaring that I deserved death. My father, who loved me genuinely and deeply, was devastated. He came to me not with hatred, but with desperation. He showed me through every visit and every conversation that he was trying to save me in the only way his world had taught him. He brought pressure. He brought arguments. He brought people of influence. He told me through his tears that I was destroying everything. He begged me to come back. Nothing, he said, could move what had been placed inside me. I was transferred to one of the worst prisons in Iraq. I spent 1 year and 4 months inside that place. The first 3 months were the ones that tested everything I had. I was beaten regularly. Not occasionally. Regularly. The guards came with questions, and when the questions were not answered to their satisfaction, they came with their hands and with other things. They wanted 3 pieces of information from me every single session. Which church did I attend? The name of the priest connected to me. The name of the Christian who had first spoken to me about faith. By the grace of God, I never gave them a single answer. I protected everyone connected to me through every session, through every form of pain they applied, through every threat they made about my family. I do not say this to present myself as a hero. I say it because I genuinely do not know how I endured it, except that something beyond my own strength was holding me. After 1 year and 4 months, the door opened. I was released under circumstances that I can only attribute to God's direct intervention in the legal process. But freedom inside Iraq for a baptized Christian under a death fatwa is not genuine freedom. My own family would be the instrument of my death if I remained. I knew this not as a fear, but as a certainty. I left Iraq and traveled to Jordan. It was in Jordan, on a summer day in 2004, after 11 years of carrying my faith in secret and in danger, that I was finally baptized. The water of that baptism felt like the completion of something that had begun in a dream. Several weeks after my baptism, I was in Amman running an ordinary errand when I was surrounded. My uncle and 4 of my brothers appeared around me in the street. They spoke calmly, as people do when they do not want to attract witnesses. They invited me into their vehicle. I was in Jordan without legal documentation and had no position to refuse. We drove for 20 minutes and the city disappeared behind us. The vehicle stopped in a valley between mountains where there was nothing around us in any direction. My uncle told me, with the cold steadiness of a man who has already made his decision, that my father had issued the order. I was to be brought back either alive or dead. He told me that every attempt to bring me back to the family and to the faith had failed. He reminded me that the fatwa remained active. He told me that if I refused to return with them, he would have no choice. I told him to do what he had come to do. I was not performing bravery. I had simply arrived at the place where fear of death was smaller than fear of denying what I knew to be true. He raised a gun and pointed it directly at my chest. He told me that my disease was Christ and that there was no cure for it. Then he fired. The bullet hit me. I felt it. I believed I was dying, and I placed what remained of my life into God's hands in that fraction of a second. Then I heard a woman's voice from somewhere I could not locate, telling me to run. I ran. All 5 men began shooting. I heard the bullets cutting the air around me. I felt a searing pain in my left leg and fell, and then I lost consciousness. I woke in a hospital. I asked the medical staff not to contact the police until they had examined me. The doctor confirmed I had been shot once in the left leg, in the muscle. I arranged to leave quietly and was taken to a safe location where 3 doctors were already waiting. They examined the leg thoroughly. They found the entry point of the bullet. They could not find where it had exited. While they were still searching, blood began flowing from the opposite side of the leg from where the bullet had entered. A Christian surgeon among them examined the x-ray taken the following day at a military hospital where he worked. The bullet was not in the leg. It was not anywhere. The surgeon showed me that the bullet had passed through bone and muscle and tendon without destroying any of them. It had moved in a path that no bullet moves in, and then it was simply gone. He told me plainly that there was no human explanation for what the images showed him. My family and I moved every night for weeks after that, staying nowhere long enough to be found. France agreed to grant us refuge, and we traveled there and have remained ever since. The fatwa against me remains active today. It does not expire. It follows me. But here is what I carry with me that is stronger than the fatwa. One of the brothers who stood in that valley and shot at me has since converted to Jesus Christ. He has been baptized. The man who pointed a weapon at me and pulled the trigger now kneels at the same cross I do. If God can reach into the heart of a man who tried to kill his own brother for following Jesus and turn that heart completely around, there is no one reading these words today who is beyond his reach. To every believer reading or watching this, please pray specifically for those living under death sentences for their faith right now, not in history, but today, in Iraq, in Iran, in countries whose names appear in no headlines. Your prayers are weapons that travel where no human being can go. If you are reading this and you have never surrendered your life to Jesus, you can do that right now. Tell him you know you need him. Tell him you believe he is who he said he was. Ask him to come in and make you new. He will not turn you away. He never has. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it, like this video. Subscribe and stay with us. Leave a comment telling me where in the world you are watching from. We are praying for you right now, and we will not stop.